The Carolina Hurricanes move on, and the Winnipeg Jets hang on. Welcome to NHL Wraparound Stanley Cupdate for Friday, May 16th, 2025. Vic and Neil heading into the weekend. So, sir, what was your general takeaway from the two games on Thursday?
Carolina Hurricanes, a team of destiny in the playoffs. Washington could not get back to the form that they once had this season, which drove them to be first in the East. Carolina clearly should be the winner of that series. And then in the other side of things, Winnipeg Jets did what they had to do in really good fashion in Winnipeg. Clearly the better team last night. And if they could just find a way to play like that on the road, they might win this series. But we know that there's two different Winnipegs.
And the home Winnipeg has to take that show away from Canada Life Center in order to bring it back for a seventh game. But let's start with the clincher, with the Hurricanes taking out the Washington Capitals in 5 games with a 3-1 win. They win this game late. Spencer Carberry made a couple of changes, moving Anthony Beauvillier to the top line and dropping Connor McMichael to center the third line. And he also added Taylor Radish in for Lars Eller. And overall, I thought this was the kind of game, even in defeat, Washington needed in game 1.
Oh, absolutely. It was almost too little too late, right? Because it's they got themselves in a hole that they couldn't get out of. And when you didn't have the Hellebuck-type goaltending that Winnipeg got, it was destiny for Carolina at that point.
One lineup change for the Hurricanes last night. Jaden Chatfield out with an undisclosed injury, and rookie Alexander Nikishin draw into the game, and I thought played quite well on both sides of the puck.
He did. He didn't look like a first NHL game rookie. As hard as his name is to say, because it sounds like Nikitchen.
Or Nishkinen.
Nikishin. Anyway, for a first game guy, and great first game, right? You knock out a team in the playoffs. You come into an NHL playoff game for your first game ever, and you're part of eliminating the Eastern Conference champs. Pretty good.
Wasn't bad. Because the Caps started this game, good pressure early. As we said, they brought it the way they should have brought it about 10 days ago. But Jordan Staal scores on a sharp angle from the low circle. That's a puck that Logan Thompson needs to stop. And this was something that, in a game as tight as this, to give up soft goals, not a good thing. And for a guy that was outstanding for the course of the regular season, his game dropped considerably during this second round.
Yeah, and that goal specifically by Jordan Staal, which I believe was his first goal of the playoffs.
Yeah,
for Staal, was a bad angle, and meaning that if Thompson was just positioned properly, the puck couldn't possibly go in. He shouldn't have seen any net from where he was. And Brian Boucher talked about that on the broadcast, that goal can't go in. So, yeah, that's the way they start this game after having a ton of pressure on Carolina. But it's the Hurricanes that get the first goal, and not a good goal, and the building lets out a collective ugh.
But Anthony Beauvillier did tie the score a little over 4 minutes later. Kind of a forced error on defenseman Jacob Slavin, who never makes errors, but kind of a forced play. Puck came off the end boards in front, and Beauvillier tied it. So moving to the top line certainly proved some benefits there for Washington.
But I got to tell you, this Beauvillier is so confusing to me, because he made that whole goal because he was the one that got Slavin's stick so that Slavin's pass off the backboards was at the wrong angle, so it came onto the side of the net. Then Beauvillier beats everybody to the front of the net and puts it in. And I mean, is this the same Anthony Beauvillier that the Islanders had, that they traded to Vancouver, that Vancouver got rid of, that went to Chicago and they got rid of? And then he goes to Pittsburgh. He was pretty good in Pittsburgh, actually, and that's why Washington traded for him. But as a backhanded compliment, this guy was playing great here, I thought, in the playoffs. I thought he was one of their best players.
He was. You know who else was good? Jacob Chikrin. I thought was outstanding in this game. He hit the post late in the first period, which, again, I think the Capitals wanted to get that lead going into that first intermission. And Logan Thompson at the other end made an unbelievable stick save, recovering to make a stop on Logan Stankoven.
Could the Utah Mammoth ever use Jacob Chikrin now? Because remember, he was with Phoenix, traded to Ottawa. Ottawa traded to Washington. Jacob Chikrin has replaced John Carlson as the number one guy.
Yeah.
And John Carlson comes out now for the second power play. I mean, he was a staple of the first power play for years in Washington. Just a little bit of a comment on Chikrin. I think he's been fantastic. Gets more shots than most of their forwards do.
Yeah, he does. The game continued strong for Washington in the second period and appeared that they had a go-ahead goal. But Matt Roy's goal was disallowed by an offside, and this one wasn't really close.
The video replay clearly shows that it's offside. And I was sitting there thinking, what if this goal were to stand? How much of an impact would that have had on the overall game? Because the building is raucous. It's 2-1 for Washington, and now they've got the lead. Instead, they never did get that 2-1 lead. And in the third period, it was actually Carolina who took that 2-1 lead.
Interestingly, the Hurricanes almost took the lead into the final period because Seth Jarvis hit the crossbar with 2 seconds left, and somehow that puck came down and missed Logan Thompson's foot, which would have propelled that puck into the net. But nonetheless, Caps kept up the urgency, but you and I started to text back and forth. And I think when you watch the game long enough, you kind of get a sense of what's going to happen. And you had said to me that you thought Carolina was a team of destiny because Washington was carrying the play. And I said, it's probably going to take one shot for Carolina to make the difference. And Andrei Svechnikov, sharp angle with a $1:59 left. And again, Thompson looking slow to react on this one. Doesn't appear that he even saw the pass go from Sean Walker over to Svechnikov.
Well, Svechnikov gave it to Walker and immediately back to Svechnikov. That's how that play went. It was a bing-bing. Svechnikov shot almost from the goal line.
Yeah.
The angle was so bad, and it somehow found a hole to get in. Another one that NHL starting goaltenders are supposed to have shots like that.
Caps made one final push in the final 2 minutes. Freddie Anderson made a save. Jacob Slavin was there to clear the puck. Jarvis gets the empty netter. And when you put a wrap on this series, you look at the goaltenders. Logan Thompson was not as good as Frederik Andersen. And the Caps only scored 7 goals in the entire series.
Yeah, isn't that amazing? 7 goals in 5 games. When you think of Ovechkin and all these other names they've got, even John Carlson and Chikrin, who we mentioned before, and Strome, and guys that have played so well during the regular season, and you never saw them during the playoffs. And I guess you should really be giving the credit, instead of criticizing that, I should be giving the credit to Carolina. That's how good Carolina was, a team that could score well during the regular season, got 7 goals in 5 games, couldn't find the back of the net versus the Hurricanes.
And the aforementioned Hurricanes will await the winner of the Toronto-Florida series, which will resume on Friday. So Winnipeg shuts out Dallas 4-0. Stars still lead the series 3-2. Game 6 will be Saturday on ABC. I'll have a bit more on that at the end of this recap. I thought this was the best game, clearly, of the playoffs for the Winnipeg Jets. From start to finish, this was the Winnipeg Jets that we saw at the start of the season, dominating teams, their urgency level was there throughout, and they deserve to send this series back to Dallas.
Oh, absolutely. It was a deserved win. They outshot the Dallas Stars in the first period 11-4. They set the tone right away. And the guy that's their best player, Connor Hellebuck, who's going to win his third Vezina Trophy in June, was tremendous. He was just simply tremendous. He deserved the shutout. And yeah, I agree with you, Vic. This is a great job by the Jets.
They started quick. Kyle Connor had two great chances early. Adam Lowry had a good chance from close in. He stopped by Jake Ottinger. And I thought Miro Heiskanen was very good for Dallas, particularly in that first period. He had a couple of shots on goal. But something interesting here is that Peter DeBoer went with 11-7 again. And I think that this was to try to ease Heiskanen back in the lineup. His ice time went up to 18:33. And perhaps going 11-7 took a little bit more toll on the forwards. And I'll be interested to see if DeBoer goes back to 12-6 on Saturday.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see if he goes back. And I think you're right. I think because Heiskanen is fresh back, he didn't want to take a chance. And so that's why he iced a seventh defenseman. But we'll see what happens. And now it's a Dallas pivotal game, Game 6. You don't want to go back to Winnipeg and have a replay of last night.
No, you don't. And now we're starting to see some bounces also go the way of the Winnipeg Jets, because in the second period, this game is scoreless, more than 6 minutes in, and Mark Scheifele looking to center a pass, cross crease to Kyle Connor. It hits Wyatt Johnston's stick and then goes off the leg of Thomas Harley. And from there, it's all Winnipeg.
Yeah, and you know what? How many goals do we see in the playoffs like this where they're just, hit a shin pad, hit a goalie, hit a stick, hit the goalie in the back of the head? But that's playoff hockey. You're trying to just throw everything you can at the net and stuff happens.
The best shot that Dallas had was Tyler Seguin going high glove on Hellebuck, where he has been vulnerable throughout these playoffs. He hits the post. And then at the other end, during the Jets' power play, Jake Ottinger makes a terrific save on Gabe Vilardi, where he's basically spun around and the puck hits him in the rear end.
That's right. That was a bum save for Vilardi.
You may say, so to speak. Final seconds, Ottinger again on Nino Niederreiter. So we go into the third period. Winnipeg has a 21-9 edge in shots. It is indicative of the play. But the turning point comes early in the third period, where Winnipeg gets a two-man advantage for 1 minute and 49 seconds by virtue of a pair of tripping penalties against Alex Petrovic and Esa Lindell. And during the first half of that power play, Connor, the Oilers at the goal line, he steps in front and makes it 2-0.
Yeah, and Oilers has been terrific for them. And of course, so is Kyle Connor. But that also, when it got to 2-0, boy, it really, it didn't look like Dallas had any hope in this game.
And they took another penalty, a roughing call against Leon Bischel. There's a neutral zone turnover by Jamie Benn. And at the end, Alex Iafallo to Vlad Mestikov. It's 3-0. This game's done.
Yeah, it is. Absolutely. And well-deserved by Winnipeg.
Thoughts on the little scrum by the benches, which ended up with Jamie Benn throwing a forearm shiver to Mark Scheifele?
I think it's just message sending and normal NHL playoff stuff at the end of the game. Jamie Benn is their leader. Scheifele, you might say, is certainly one of the leaders of the Winnipeg Jets, and just a bit of a message that things aren't going to be too easy when you get to Dallas.
But discipline has to rule here, because once you get deep in series, the stakes are higher, and sometimes you got to say, you know what, I'll get my revenge next season.
Oh, absolutely. But this was at the game. Ben knew by now that they were losing this game, and he was setting it up for the next game.
Oilers with an empty netter to make the final 4-0. As I said at the top of this game, best 60 minutes for the Jets in the playoffs. They had a 35-22 shot edge. But what impressed me is they only had 17 attempts that were blocked or missed the net. And Connor Hellebuck, 22 saves for his second shutout of the series. But there's a big but that comes with it. And it shows up Saturday night. Can he deliver the one game that he needs to on the road, where it has been nothing but a mess for him so far?
Well, he's got to take confidence from the game that he played last night and take that with him to Dallas. And Winnipeg has to make sure that they get the first goal and that Dallas doesn't get the first goal, turn the building into an insane asylum, and and be caught in that game. So we'll see. We'll see. You got to have a lot of hope now for Winnipeg Jets. I mean, there's a lot of people who thought they were done last night. They were going to be done. And they came back, and that was a great effort, a great win for the Jets.
So again, Game 6, Saturday on ABC. And just a little side note here, that had both series ended on Thursday, there was a configuration that Dallas and Edmonton were going to open their series on Saturday night for network television, and that they were going to play Saturday, Monday, and then 3 days off before the series shifted to Edmonton, which would have been some pretty wild scheduling and, in my opinion, would have compromised the product at the expense of TV.
Oh, absolutely. And it's a good thing that didn't happen, because you would have had a lot of people with an opinion similar to ours.
Yes. So we'll leave it at that.
It didn't happen, so we can move on.
We can. Because on Friday, Toronto and Florida play their sixth game at 8 o'clock on TNT. If there is a seventh game necessary for this series, it will be played Sunday at 7:30. Anthony Stolarz unlikely to make the trip down to Florida, but truth be told, Toronto doesn't come up with a better effort, and I think they will, because it just couldn't be much worse than it was in Game 5. It's not going to matter who's in goal.
It's not going to matter who's in goal if they play the way they played in Toronto. I would expect that you're going to get a lot better effort out of them, but I don't think they have a hope in hell to win the game Friday night. What about you?
I believe that Florida knows how to step on the throat of an opponent, but the one thing that Craig Berube can hang his head on is saying, look, Panthers were up 3-0 in the Cup final last year and had to win 2-1 in Game 7 in order to win the Stanley Cup. So while this is a very formidable task ahead for the Maple Leafs, it's not impossible, because clubs have done it before, most specifically the Oilers last year. But I think for Berube, diagnosing what the problem with his team is a pretty easy task. But the cure is considerably more difficult. His big guns have to go in this game. It's pure and simple. We've said it throughout the series. We've seen William Nylander as the best Leaf forward. Matthew Nyes, I think, is second behind that. Austin Matthews, Mitch Marner, John Tavares, Matt Pacioretty, and maybe some of that secondary scoring clearly has to show up in this game.
They have to be the Winnipeg Jets of last night. That's what they have to do. They have to have their best game of the series. We know they've had their worst, so that's out of the way. Now have your best. And if you have your best, you got a chance, because they got so much talent. I just think that the Florida Panthers, exactly what you said, they know how to end a series. And I know they went to 7 last year. They were up 3-0. They couldn't end that one until the 7th game, but they still ended it. They learned from that. I mean, they're still the same team. Let's see what happens. Let's wait and give Toronto the benefit of the doubt. But if I was a betting man, and of course I'm not.
No.
I would be betting on Florida tonight. So there you go. That might give the game to Toronto right there. If I'm saying I'm betting on Florida, Toronto's going to win.
I think we just lost some listeners because they are racing offline from listening to us, getting on a FanDuel or DraftKings to make their wagers.
Yeah, and they're plunking down everything on Toronto.
So what were your odds on Jim Hiller remaining as the Kings coach? He had lengthy discussion with new GM Ken Holland. He's going to stay on board. I think there was some question after the series against the Oilers for the Kings got away from them.
Yeah, and I mean, I would imagine that Ken Holland had a lot of conversation with Luc Robitaille and a lot of conversation with Rob Blake, and made the decision, with the time he's got left on his contract, et cetera, that he'll evaluate him this season as the season goes on.
Do you think because of the way the Kings lost that this leash may be a little bit shorter than it would have been otherwise?
I would think so. I mean, you can't make too many bonehead blunders like he did with that challenge and get away with it in the NHL. So good luck to Jim Hiller. And he still does have those great leaders in Kopitar and Doughty and Kempe. And I was thinking the other night when I knew Kenny got the job, like, I love some of their players. I really like Adrian Kempe. I think he's fun to watch. Mikey Anderson is fun to watch. Remember their home record this year?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, they really entertain their fans. They what did they lose? 4 home games in regulation all season?
They were actually 31-6-4.
Okay, so 6 regulation losses. If you're a season ticket holder, you're going to 41 games, and only 6 times do you leave with your team having lost in regulation. That's pretty good. That's pretty entertaining. So they got a good team. They keep drawing Edmonton during the time when Edmonton's just a big powerhouse, even though they haven't won the cup. Maybe next year they won't get Edmonton somehow. The way that division lines up, they got to hope that Edmonton ends in first and they end in third and they get whoever, Vegas or somebody. But we'll see.
Long way away from that.
We sure are.
Speaking about a long way away, would you like to put your intro voice on?
Let's talk about this day in Stanley Cup history, May 16th.
And we turn the clock back 29 years to 1996. Game 7, overtime, the St. Louis Blues and the Detroit Red Wings. And even though the Wings have not made the playoffs since 2016, this is one of their biggest moments in history because Steve Yzerman, at 1:15 of the second overtime, with a bomb over the right shoulder of John Casey to move the Wings into the Western Conference Final where they would lose to Colorado. But that goal, which was actually on a misplay by Wayne Gretzky in center ice that enabled Yzerman to get the puck, one of the most memorable in Detroit history.
Yeah, it certainly is. And it's a highlight reel that we've seen over and over again of Stevie jumping up and down after he scores that blistering slap shot. Detroit Red Wings with 131 points that year, 62, 13, and 7. 62 wins, 13 losses. What a year. Didn't win the cup, had to wait one more year to do that. That was the year that the brand new Colorado Avalanche, playing in McNichols Arena, beat the Florida Panthers home ice in the Miami Arena.
Yeah.
And they beat them in 4 games, and overtime in game 4 on a goal scored by a German national named
Uwe Krupp,
on the goaltender named
John Van Beesbrook.
And that's this day in Stanley Cup history.
Can I add one more note there?
Sure.
I was on the ice after the game, after the goal went in, and I was producing for Brian Engblom for ESPN down on the ice. And you remember the Rats?
Oh, yeah.
I took one right in the face.
Wow. That's one thing you don't want to brag about, that you got hit in the face with a rat.
Well, I'm a former hockey player, so I was tough. I gritted through it. So glasses were all askew and everything, but we managed to get through it. And certainly 1996, a memorable year. So, hey, for the first time in a month, guess what we're not doing?
I don't know.
We're probably not recording a show for Saturday because I got a little bit of graduation business to attend to. My first, Ethan, graduating from University of Massachusetts. He's worked in the hockey department there for 4 years, double major in sports management and operations and information management. So he's got a double degree, which is twice as many as his father got. And he's also got certification in business analytics. So, hey, 32 teams out there. You want somebody that knows the league, knows the business, has gotten great training, and best of all, humble young man. This would be a great hire for you. So I'm making the endorsement because, frankly, if somebody's not worth it, whether they're family, friend, or somebody I've just met, I don't put my ass on the burner unless they're worth it.
No, he's a good kid, and will have a great career ahead of him. And whoever hires him will be lucky to have done that.
So with that, we sign off for today. Neil and I will likely return on Sunday with another edition of Stanley Cupdate. And our next wraparound will be the conference final preview. So as always, thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.